Hello, you are very welcome to this EU Green Week session. We're going to be talking now about popular objectives and controversial measures, how to increase acceptance of zero pollution measures in cities. My name's Jennifer Baker. I'm going to be your moderator today, but of course we want a great interactive discussion and we have some wonderful speakers for you. If you've been following Green Week all along, of course you know that we are also using the Slido tool to communicate with audience and take the temperature of everyone who's following online. Now, to remind you, you can use Slido on your phone or on your tablet. You just go to slido.com and then put in the code EU Green Week 2021. There's no need to download anything. It's very safe. It's very privacy friendly. So that's why we're using it. So you can use it on your phone or on your laptop. So let's get started with an icebreaker question, just to make sure that everyone knows how to use it. The question we're asking is, what's your role, or in what capacity are you attending today? So you've got some options. You could be a citizen, local government, civil society organization, policy expert, an EU representative or a national representative, or other. You don't have to tell us what that is, but we will keep an eye on that to see what the responses are. We also want you to share on social media. Do tell us what you think about our discussion today. Use the hashtag GreenWeek, or you can use the hashtag Urban LEDs. That's, of course, low emission development strategies. And of course, the hashtag climate action. Now, the Smart Cities Marketplace is an EU initiative supporting the development of smart cities to improve citizens' quality of life, increase the competitiveness of European cities and industry, as well as to reach the European energy and climate targets. So, reducing pollution and improving air quality in cities is, of course, a huge objective, and it finds widespread support across the EU and across policy levels and across different backgrounds of different citizens. The question is how to deliver it on the ground. How can you actually make these actions happen in a way that brings everybody on board with you and gets the support of the entire populace and those whom it affects? So we're going to take the question of how to get all responsible actors on board effectively and increase public acceptance of change in public spaces. We all know that change can be a challenging thing for ourselves and for our communities. So we're going to work on ways to talk about that in a positive format. Let's have a look at the responses to that first poll question. I think we can probably get the Slido results up on screen. Okay, so a good lot of people here are coming from local government. Obviously, this particular session must be of great interest to you. Civil society organizations as well. No citizens or policy experts claiming to be here yet, but I guess we're all citizens in one place or another. So thank you very much for that. I'm now going to launch a second poll, which we will come back and look at in a little bit. But the question we're asking for our second poll is, would you agree that a clean mobility, energy efficient buildings, greening and renewable energy production is important and should be increased in your city? So those options to reply: a lot, very much, so, and not really. So we'll let you vote away there, while I hand over to my co-moderator. This is Georgia Rambelli, is going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting behind the scenes today. So Georgia, I will let you introduce yourself, your background, and what's going to happen over the next hour.
Thank you very much, Jennifer, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As Jennifer said, my name is Georgia Rambelli. I'm the Climate Policy and Energy Governance Coordinator at DCLE European Secretariat, and it's a great pleasure for me to be with you today, to be here in this session with you. And really to have the honor to kickstart what I'm sure will be an extremely interesting conversation on how even the most ambitious and impactful measures aim to take us closer to reaching climate neutrality can sometimes really collide with the needs of the realities on the ground. The unprecedented scale and the scope of action that is needed to tackle the global climate challenges we are facing and to successfully meet the objectives of the Paris Agreement leave no question. We really need to have all hands on deck, not only to raise ambition and commitment, but most of all, to truly accelerate action across sectors, across level of government, but also across all parts of society. So more than 70% of climate mitigation and up to 90% of climate adaptation measures are undertaken by local and regional authorities. In the EU, local and regional governments implement roughly 70% of all of EU legislation, representing 1/3 of the public spending and 2/3 of public investment. They are a key partner for Europe's journey to climate neutrality. And turning Europe into the first climate neutral continent by 2050 is not only a challenge, it represents truly a great opportunity to drive forward transformation, a transformation that can impact our society like never before. And this will be true both from an environmental and economic, but also a social point of view. So the Green Deal, and today, of course, this is very much up in the framework of our discussion, can provide a great framework to bring together action across sector, and also to make sure that as many of the action required in the field of transport, building renovation, waste management, just to name a few, are within local government's mandate. As such, of course, the lessons learned and the experiences we will hear about today from our guest cities are even more crucial. Local governments are not only administrators, but they can lead by example. They are not only service providers to the community they serve and represent, but also catalyzers for action and drivers of innovation. For these reasons, local governments are the best place where the Green Deal can truly be implemented in the next years. So we will talk about place-based action, local community-driven approaches as key for success of a green resilient recovery for Europe, as well as for an impactful but also capillary change on the ground in our communities. Citizens and communities need to be not only on board in these processes and when these measures are being designed, but they need to be integral part of this process, even when this is challenging. Actually, in particular, when this is challenging. All of these difficulties is what we want to focus on today. The trade-offs between ambitious climate targets and measures that can quickly become unpopular, the lessons learned from policies and action that initially encountered opposition, but that ultimately the community is no longer to live without, the to-dos and don'ts from cities that today will share with you what worked well, very well, but also what was critical, difficult, and what they will do in a different way. So, ladies and gentlemen, local Green Deals and local climate pacts the cities across Europe are developing as we speak, and we will hear a little bit more about this during today's session, can truly bring an outstanding added value of pulling together ambitious targets, co-created measures implemented for and by the community with stronger connection to local policies. So today we will discuss with you how to work towards ensuring that the vision that both our communities, our cities, but even ourselves have a sustainable future, and how to make sure that it will not collide with the reality of the implementation on the ground for our cities. So thank you very much, and I truly look forward to continue the discussion with you, with the speakers, and of course with all of you in the audience. And I will be in the background here to really make sure that your questions are coming through and that we can make sure that you also participate actively to the conversation. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Georgia. Exactly. I was going to mention that indeed you can use the Q&A function on Slido to send your questions to our panelists. That is open. You can use it right away. But let's first have a look at how people voted in that last poll. Do we think we need these initiatives a little, a lot, and not very much? I can tell you that if we can see it on the screen, most people have said, 83% of people have said a lot. We need these important, yes, there we go. A very, very long way in front. So let's launch our next poll. Now, this one's a little bit complicated. So your municipality has approved one of the above mentioned projects. Now, this will require the complete closure of the street in front of your home for about 2 months, and the construction site will be open for around 8 months. Would you still be in favor of it? So we're asking people to really consider, when there's a little bit of disruption, how much in favor of it they are. There's a various options there. Yes, despite it all. Yes, but I would put pressure on the works to be done quickly. Yes, but I would move. And maybe not. Why is it not somewhere else? And no, climate benefits cannot compensate with personal life quality loss for 10 months. We'll see how people vote, because now I'm going to introduce you to our fantastic speakers who you can see here on the screen with me. We have from Cork City Council, David Joyce, who is the Director of Services, Roads and Environment Operations Directorate. Alpo Tani is a Climate Change Mitigation Specialist from the City of Helsinki. Luis Tiero is in the General Directorate for Sustainability and Environment Control in the City of Madrid. And Willem Jan Renga is Citizen Engagement and Co-Creation Manager at the Aris Smart Cities project as part of the Utrecht University's arts and technical information. So thank you all very much for being with me. You also see we have joining us in a little bit Agnes Schoenefelder, who will be giving her reflections and thoughts. But first of all, gentlemen, I'm going to hear your city pitches. So these are going to be like we call elevator pitches in the startup world. It's going to be 3 minutes, 2 slides, and we're going to hear very, very briefly about the projects before we talk about them in more depth. So if you are following along closely, remember, if you've got questions, now's the time to try and write them in so we have time to answer them. David, let me start with you. Give me your rapid fire pitch.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. I'm delighted to be here today with everybody. I don't seem to have control over the slides for some reason. So yeah, thank you very much. I'm here today to talk about Cork City Council and what we have done in relation to introducing bus priority measures in Cork. So the good, the bad, and unfortunately the ugly of the experience that we've had in relation to that. As you can see on the screen there, we've got a national planning framework, and within that there are a number of key deliverables that are relevant to the Bus Connects. If you click on again to the next part, yeah, it's also relevant to the Sustainable Development Goals, which is very, very important. And equally up on the top right-hand side, you will see that we have very, very ambitious targets over the next 20 years in Cork to increase our population in the city by 50%, so going from 211,000 people to 336,000 people. So to do that, that is obviously going to result in very, very significant transport challenges. How do you get all those extra people around the city? We don't want to do it in cars, obviously, so we need to do it in a sustainable way. So down the bottom left, you will see we came up with this, again, a 20-year strategic transport plan to match the national planning framework and to deliver some of the key strategic deliverables that we need to provide over the next 20 years. It's a phased approach, obviously, and it is a significant investment, probably up to €3 billion over that period of time, but you have to start somewhere. So we decided to look at a quick, easy win, as we thought at the time. We were somewhat mistaken. A quick, easy win by taking the main thoroughfare through the city centre, as you can see that on the map there in front of you, and to make that a bus to cycling corridor only. Very easy to do, we thought. It would be a very, very beneficial project because based on the analysis we did, 80% of the cars using that thoroughfare was through traffic, did not stop on the street, had no reason to be there, other than it's the way they always drove to and from work or to and from the shops. And secondly, it would actually reduce the bus journey times by 28%, taking 12 minutes off of that bottleneck in the middle of the city centre for buses, which is a massive benefit from a sustainable transport perspective. So we thought this was an excellent project. Unfortunately, as you can see down the bottom, the quotation from the headline in relation to it not being a very popular proposal, very negative rhetoric in the headline, anti-car and graveyard. It was a very, very negative reaction. So I suppose it became very clear to us that there was a big gap between the theory and the practice. People supported the theory of sustainable transport and sustainable development, but the practicalities of when it was implemented and when it directly impacted on them was a very, very, very different matter. So unfortunately, we had to temporarily suspend the measure and go back to the drawing board. So if you go to the next slide, please. So what did we do? It was very clear that we had undertaken our normal statutory consultation and we had proceeded with the project because we got no negative feedback. But clearly there was no negative feedback because either A, people weren't engaged with the concept, or B, people didn't understand the concept. So what we did, we went back and I suppose we started at the very start again and started explaining in very much non-technical terms what we were doing. Sometimes when we're implementing, as engineers and as specialists, we're implementing measures, we use very technical terms. We use terms like AADT and acronyms that people don't know what they mean. So we went back to the drawing board and started explaining in very, very simple, plain language what we were doing, why we were doing it. And we looked at producing brochures and leaflets, colourful information. And we met directly and talked to a lot of the key stakeholders. And importantly, we listened. We really, really, really listened. A lot of people, this impacted on them directly. It wasn't theoretical. They had questions and we needed to listen to them. But most importantly is the bottom left item there, context. We put this into the context. On its own, looking at this bus, it makes no sense. It doesn't deliver, it delivers some improvements, but overall it's not a massive improvement. but it has to be taken and understanding the sequence of events. You have to start somewhere if you've got a 20-year plan. And we explained the cumulative effect of the different phases that were going to be implemented and why this was the first phase. And at the bottom right, just importantly, it shows that we took people from being negative towards the project to engaging with the project to supporting the project. And after 3 months, we were able to reintroduce that scheme and have now started building on that for the rest of the 20-year plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you indeed. That was a very whistle-stop tour. I mean, I was slightly shocked, as you said, by some of those headlines myself, David. Alpo, let me go over to you. Give us your quick, rapid roundup of your project.
All right, thank you so much. So, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Alpo Tani from the city of Helsinki, where I work as a climate change mitigation specialist on the field of urban planning. And my case today will be about converting inner city highways into sustainable city districts. And this goes back to our recent city scale strategic planning process, in which we went through the various options how city can grow in the future in coming years, even on coming decades, as sustainable as possible way. And we came up with this idea that we have these current inner city highways in our city. Why not convert those into kind of boulevard sort of new city districts? And we proposed this idea to our politicians, and maybe even a bit surprisingly, they agreed pretty much with this idea. And first of these corridors have now proceeded in the detail planning phase. This text, for example, is straight from those planning documents, and you can also see this pair of pictures which shows the current situation and the situation when these things are implemented or more or less on place. Next slide, please. Next. Yes. So obviously, proposing kind of idea where you take space from the private cars, it can be considered as quite radical idea. It's been even considered as a paradigm shift kind of idea. And when doing such things, you obviously get some problems with acceptance, to be honest. And we faced some resistance from the federal side also. In Finnish planning system, there's a certain monitoring body which is monitoring all the urban planning done in the nation, and they were quite critical. Also, neighboring municipalities were really critical. Some of them, they even said that this is against fundamental rights, because you can't come with your private cars as easily as nowadays into center of the capital. So really much critics from there. Also, later on, residents have been quite critical, because it's also clear that some parts of current green areas will be lost. They are kind of noise barrier areas currently between highway and the residential areas, but also they can be considered as a green areas. And regarding solutions, I think maybe the most important one is to really like to have this kind of strong strategy behind your solutions. And more and more relevant is also like to have those climate target-based argumentations on place. And by that I mean that if you can also always say that, well, if this isn't like good way to do this thing, what are our options then? And it's kind of the responsibility of those who are putting that critique on place. So to give kind of some sort of alternatives then. Seeing that I'm running out of time, but I picked this last one. There isn't really any silver bullets to solve these sort of things, but it's more like a variety of solutions, obviously. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Alpha. That is one thing that's coming here is people really love their cars, no matter what. It's
for sure. Yeah, many of them. Not all.
So, Luis, let's hear from you and your experience.
Hello, thank you for the invitation to Madrid. It's nice to be here to hear you. And well, I'm going to give you a quick glimpse of a key measure that took place in Madrid, and well, it's still ongoing. And well, it is called Madrid Central. Madrid Central is one of the main measures included in the Air Quality and Climate Change Plan. It consists of a low emissions area in the city center over a surface of 480 hectares. The low emissions area was created in November 2018. And once it was deployed, the access to this zone was restricted. Only residents, service vehicles, public transport, motorbikes were allowed to enter there. Private transport was only allowed to those vehicles with an ecological label, zero emissions vehicles, full electric or hybrid, with a range of 40 kilometers were permitted. At that moment, the air quality plan and this measure were a response to the EU request in order to avoid a penalization because of the non-compliance of the EU air quality levels for several pollutants. Next slide, please. Well, I think the next slide. There, thank you. Well, there were a lot of different circumstances that were affected by the restrictions. Access to school, for instance, delivery, activity to business. Well, a very wide range of business. We have to take into account that we were entering the city center where, well, many things are happening there. That entailed a very controversial measure, and a lot of people claim against this measure. But the key point is that, in addition, Madrid Central became a political issue, and that changed everything. The opposition party declared that Madrid Central was cutting the freedom of people to move. So they make the promise to remove it if they won the elections. Something that happens 1 year later. And then the party won the elections. This previous opposition party won the elections and rapidly communicate that they will remove Madrid Central as promised, as they promised. Then a public mobilization took place and a neighboring platform was created. Madrid Respira was called. I was claiming for the continuity of the restriction. So we had the people on both sides, people that claim against this measure, and then now when it was going to be removed, other people claiming for the contrary. The thing is that some other entities from European cities, association, or many other entities support the low emission zone and communicate that the penalty process could go ahead again if this measure were removed. And unless another ambitious air quality plan was done, this measure should go on the city. So the low emission zone is still running, although some other threats have appeared. Some legal claims has gone ahead, and now there is a sentence to remove the low emission zones, although this time the local government is going to push for it and will try to keep it going. I think that the particular reason or argument here, or circumstance, is that this measure that should be only an environmental or a mobility measure became a political issue, and that changed everything. And everything was confused, and people took place of one position just in sometimes for political reasons, and well, it was very confused. We have still these low emission zones, but there are some uncertainties in the future to know what is going to happen. We hope it continue in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luis. We appreciate that. It sounds like we're having very similar experiences. Willem, Jan, what's your take? Give us your quick pitch.
Yeah, there goes my 3 minutes. welcome. I'm very pleased to be here. We'll be representing the city of Utrecht, but especially the IRIS project, which is a massive undertaking, 5-year project, 7 countries, 42 partners, sorry. So what can we tell in 3 minutes? Well, next slide, please. I'd like you to take a very detailed approach, lifting out one particular small measure from our IRIS project to illustrate what we feel is a fundamental issue that we run across when doing our measures in a city. The target area that was selected for Utrecht as a city is considered to be a problematic area. And it was labeled as such because it's a low income, low social status housing environment. And it has received quite a lot of political attention to raise standards and support local people. But still, it was selected for our measures because of the amount of social housing that we could address to create economies of scale in implementing these measures. One detail is that at some point, we needed to insert smart meters into an apartment block to get some 0 point measures on energy usage. So there was a free package available of these smart meters to put into these households. Well, usually what we would do is have an evening where we invite the citizens to explain to them, like teachers to students, why it's important, that they should accept it, how wonderful an opportunity it is. But these strategies failed in our neighborhood. And the reason is not because these are bad people. On the contrary, these people struggle with life issues far beyond the scope of having to worry about energy, unfortunately. So they're struggling with life issues like unemployment issues, safety issues in the neighborhood. There's a lot of dereliction and waste in the streets. And these are all subjects that take their immediate attention. On the side, given that there's a large migrant population in this neighborhood, 70% of them are illiterate in their own language, let alone in Dutch. So sending out letters to them to explain are simply measures that are not received or processed. So instead, and this is what we now call in our project a low effort design approach, we decided to reverse the effort. We didn't want to put the effort on the citizen, but instead take the effort ourselves. So we started to go door to door, build trust and confidence in face-to-face meetings. And what you see on this slide on the right is that we took the citizens in close contact through all the steps that were needed to get these smart meters into their house. From getting an email, getting it out of the spam box, pushing a button, getting an email back, signing a privacy agreement. All these steps we felt were possible disengagement points, and we took them through these disengagement points. And to cut a long story short, at the start of this small measure, the expectancy of conversion on a letter were 5%, and we managed to raise the bar to 40% acceptance of these smart meters in the social housing block that we had as our first pilot. And these results have quite fundamentally changed a number of other processes in our project to engage with our citizens in this particularly lovely neighborhoods, but with its own challenges. That didn't make it to 3 minutes. I'm sorry, Jennifer.
Well, I think you did a good job in describing what are very complex projects in a really quite short space of time. So I do appreciate that. Now, let's have a quick look at the poll that I asked before you presented your experiences. I can see, I don't know if we can see it on the screen, but I can see that the vast majority of people said, yes, they would be prepared to put up with this disruption despite it all. Then another 38% said they would just put up with it, but they would still want to push for the works to be done quickly. And then a mere 5% said they would move to another house apartment. I think that's only if you've got the luxury of being able to afford to do such a thing. No one said no. No one said they don't believe it was worth the hassle. I don't feel that chimes with the experience on the ground that certainly some of you have had. David, would you have expected this response?
No, and I suppose going back to some of the presentations that were made, I think it very much depends on the audience that you're talking to. And you've got different cohorts of people across society. Some are very much supportive of sustainable development. But as was mentioned by one of the other speakers, some have other challenges in their life that they would see as much more immediate than maybe some of the sustainable development goals and achieving some of those. But no, I think, it really doesn't hit people, the theory or the plan, the strategic plan, until people see it happening on the ground. And again, the experience we had is everybody that we would have asked would have said, of course, they support sustainable public transport. But then when you actually implement it, and I'd be very interested to see that poll, if it was rerun again, if somebody was outside somebody's house and there was actually 10 months of disruption, after the first 3 or 4 months, would they still have the same attitude?
Yes, I think that's very much the impression I got. I see we have quite a few questions coming in via Slido already. Mats says, I understand the direct and honest conversation with citizens is important, but asks, is that not too large an investment to do with every single project? Pushing back on the idea that maybe it's just not feasible. Alpo, do you want to answer that question? What are your thoughts on whether the investment and the effort to put into this big conversation is enough or is feasible for every project?
Yeah, it's a good question, and obviously it's about you can't do it with the same scale everywhere, but kind of to have that principle of having a dialogue and to ask from the residents. I think it's very, very critical and crucial thing to do. And nowadays, what is like kind of the cool thing is that you have let's say all these web-based tools also to do that sort of public participation. So, and I feel that there's lots of potential also to really utilize all those tools on more effective way.
Luis, same question to you then. What's your ideas on what, Mats is suggesting that maybe it is a very big ask for every single project.
Yeah, well, I think it's something that we have to integrate in the cost of projects. I mean, I think there's no other option that we have to take the people in and to come with all the citizens. I mean, it's something that of course is going to increase the cost of projects and also the period, the time of the process. But it's something that we cannot. We have to try to make it better, but we cannot avoid it. But I think it is difficult just to go into with a project and try to raise the participation. We need some structures and I mean, I don't know how to say, some constant structures and then go in each project developing in a tailor made process for each occasion. But it's difficult, of course. It's an increase of cost, but that is what we have. I mean, we have to face this.
Well, a follow-up question to you, Luis, directed straight for you. An anonymous attendee has said that you say, Luis, that any measure that is just environmental will become a political issue. Does adding health benefits, not just environmental benefits, help to the list of advantages, help to convince people?
Well, maybe I don't think quite good. Sorry, my English is not very good. But no, I don't want to mean that the environmental became a political issue. I just say that in this occasion, in the case of Madrid Central, for different reasons, this measure became a political argument for the campaign. I'm agreed that there are many different measures that we have to take in the city that hasn't nothing to do with the political, or shouldn't do it in that way. But well, it's difficult. I don't know. There are different contests, and politics are always surrounding many decisions.
Okay, let's move on to a different question. William, I think this is one you actually probably already touched on. We've mentioned certainly already, but it is a question saying, in your experience to the panel, is there a specific segment of the population that is more difficult to reach that you could specifically identify? Is it elderly? Is it young people? Would you like to take a guess at that or stab at that in your experience?
Well, I can only talk from the experience in this particular project, right? And we are now confronted with the challenge of trying to implement our measures in this particular neighborhood where people don't have the luxury to take this as their prime priority. And we see other neighborhoods in Utrecht that have a high adoption rate of, let's say, moving to electric cars, start to do car sharing, etc. But usually these neighborhoods have a kind of distinct footprint in terms of education levels, in terms of average income levels. And I would say that voluntarily adopting these energy transition measures seem to be correlating with the socioeconomic status that people have. If you want to modify your house, even if there's support from the government, it's still quite a costly affair to do it on your own. We are now challenging a neighborhood where people don't have that luxury and don't have the means to do it and have all these pressing urgent matters in their lives. And there it becomes increasingly difficult to start engaging citizens. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't think it should be a discussion because the risk we take is that we implement lots of technical measures. But if people don't adopt them, if they don't use them, then they won't have the impact that we are after to meet our goals. So in terms of percentage of spending in these projects on citizen engagement, I think we should dramatically change the formula. It's not an addition. It's a vital, quintessential aspect that needs more attention, in my personal opinion.
Well, I think that feeds in quite nicely to another question from our audience, which is, how big of a factor is possible support or opposition of the public for certain measures in the planning phase? At what I think the specific element we want to address here is the planning stage. David, maybe you could go first and reflect on that, please.
I think it's imperative that at the planning phase, I mean, if you do not have people on board at the planning phase, they're not going to come on later. Planning is where you set the foundations for the project. It's very, very difficult. It's like an oil tanker. If you're halfway through the project, to turn it around and change it is very, very difficult. You need to get the project right at the start. You need the support at the very, very start, so that when you start the construction, it's then too late to start trying to change what you're doing. You're then bolting on changes which will never fit in properly. So it is imperative that people are involved from the very, very start and you get buy-in from the start.
Albo, I want to ask you a question. You could perhaps answer that one as well, but I want to add as well, Marina has asked a question saying, did you notice a change in people's reaction over recent years in intensity or direction to measures taken due, for example, to social media or more awareness? I mean, presumably it plays a part.
Yes, first of all, this previous question, I totally agree with David that you can't basically start this public participation process too early. You need to do it right from the start. And regarding the, let's say, environmental question, especially climate-related questions, it's also been at least studied in our city that people are really they are waiting for the city, from the city side, this kind of climate actions. It's clear. But then again, a bit like in this street example in the poll, it's clear that when it comes close, then it might be a bit different. Then all these different aspects comes also in the picture. But still, and regarding this social media question, I think it really has played a role. There, for example, been kind of quite active groups in social media platforms where thousands of people discuss about city development related issues in let's say at least in Helsinki.
Willem, let me ask another question of you that's been put by our audience and is very popular. It's getting lots of upvotes, this question. And it's a suggestion, I think, as well. Could you integrate citizen science projects where people are making the measurements themselves to see the results in, for example, increased air quality? Is that something that would be an interesting option?
Funny you should mention that, because we just heard that we were awarded another Green Deal project that has this at the core of its proposal and got a 15 out of 15 recommendation. So yes, I firmly believe that, but because I helped writing the proposal, I think that we should try every trick in the book to find various strategies to involve citizens in becoming active or participating. And there's no, I fully agree with my colleague from Helsinki, there's no silver bullet, but we should fire many bullets. And explore in the various projects all these strategies to see what works and what doesn't, and in what context. Because the problems we now encounter in our neighborhoods might be different in another neighborhood. But yeah, I'm surely going full fanaticism in this new project to experiment with this notion of citizen engagement through citizen science.
Well, actually, let me ask a follow-up question since it's directed specifically at you. How difficult is it for academia to be heard by politicians? How do you convince them to take your advice?
I don't think, at least in my experience in our project, I don't find them not receptive to input or suggestions. But I think we have collectively to overhaul many assumptions and traditions in ways of working that we adopted in the past and need to change. And I have noticed this, even working with some of our partners in the project, that it takes bravery and it takes courage to change your habits. And some of the changes in our project came about by failure in some areas to increase the pressure on that change. But I think it also depends on the political climate. I mean, in Utrecht, we have a very pro energy change local government. So that truly helps. We've got full wind in the sails. I can imagine if we would have a different political regime, then you would have this problem more immediately.
Well, I think now might be a good time for me to bring in Agnes Schoenfelder, from the head of Mannheim Climate Protection Center. Agnes, I know you've been thinking about reflections and to react to some of these pitches, but what have you, just briefly, in terms of the sorts of questions we're getting from our audience, what do you think of those? Are you surprised, or did you expect that this would be what people who are following GreenWeek would certainly be interested in?
That's not my part, no. It's additional to the speech.
It's additional,
okay.
I just want to get your thoughts on the questions we're receiving.
Yes, these are the question I expected in every session I'm doing about climate action as a CEO of a climate action agency. We get these questions. What about the awareness rising? What it has to do with the real doing? What is about social innovation in energy transition? How can we use that? How can we pick up people where they are, if it is at school, in the kindergarten, or elderly people, and so on. So we have all these experiences, and the questions are always the same. So I will give in my reflection some advices and recommendations and reflections from my work, and also to the others which have presented today.
Thank you, Agnes. And Georgia, since I know you're there behind the scenes reading all these questions as well, I'd just quickly like to get your thoughts, because we're trying to take the temperature of the audience this week. We're very much trying to get feedback, and it's nice to know what you think of the sorts of questions we're getting.
I think a lot of these questions are quite to the point, looking into really what is the added value of this engagement process. And I think across all the questions, and we have some more, of course, that are still coming in, a lot are looking into different parts of society, different specific type of stakeholders and the way that they react. But I think there is also a balance that the audience is trying to understand between how much is an obligation, what comes through, how much is something that should be done with the support, for example, of scientific data and engagement of the scientific community, how much is something that should be done from the very beginning. So I think everyone is trying to find a little bit, not a silver bullet. I know David and Alpo already said that there is no silver bullet, but definitely some indications on how we can approach this type of issues and how we can really truly engage the citizens to make successful our measures. So I think a lot of ideas coming in and a lot of curiosity around how to really square the circle.
Absolutely. I think, and while there might not be one solution fits all, there's certainly a lot of learnings and best practices one can take from the experiences of others, not least the things that haven't worked, to avoid. Another question has come in from Ugo, and it's a question, Luis, for you, asking, was it helpful to increase public acceptance of the fact that there are legal obligations to be achieved and a threat of commission infractions? So does the stick work as well as the carrot?
Maybe the one mistake that we did with this measure when we tried to deploy is that we tried to connect with all the communities and all the business and all the things that happen there, but it was really, really huge and difficult because the city center is very diverse and very complex. But of course, I agree that we should have been more close to the people and show what were the risks of not doing this measure in many different sense, in sense of the penalty of the European Commission or Union, or also in terms of health or in terms, it was maybe less, not much work, or we should have done much a more intense work together with the people, with the neighbors and the communities, and showing all the circumstances that were around.
Mats, again, asking another question, asking whether any of the panelist cities have worked with citizen ambassadors, so specifically focusing on a local leader or leaders rather than a wider group with residents. Have any of you got experience with that? I see, Wilhelm-Jan, you're nodding. Give us your impression, and Luis, you as well. Okay.
Well, I must say that was one of our key strategies that we tried to implement from the early stages of the project. But one of the lessons learned that we took from engaging with our citizens in this particular neighborhood was that we found there was a very low social cohesion fabric in let's say, an informal sense. So we expected to be able to tap into informal networks using, let's say, local influencers to bind more citizens to our project. But then we found that there were not many informal networks we could tap into, apart from finding the influential people. But the spreading mechanisms were very difficult to unfold or unlock. And the clusters that we found were often focusing on warning each other for unwanted things in their neighborhood, like theft or dangerous situations or so. But many people didn't know their neighbors in one of our apartment buildings, let alone the top floors or the bottom floors. So we couldn't find ways to multiply that effect. What did work wonderfully was using the children to influence the parents, but it's a different strategy.
Well, yes, local leaders, the small people. Another question is there one engagement or mediation measure that you find helpful in reaching out and mediating conflict? David, I haven't heard from you in a while. What's your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I suppose it's back to there's no silver bullet. It's trying everything and different groups. So if you're engaging with residents, they have a separate set of concerns than businesses. So it's really trying to understand the audience that you're engaging with and then changing the methodologies and the language that you use to engage with those people. So if you're engaging with somebody who is very, very proficient in the technicalities, then you're going to engage with them on a technical level. Whereas if you're engaging with somebody who isn't as technical minded and they're more interested in local issues, then you're going to be engaging with them in a different way. But it's really about engagement. I suppose going back to my presentation, it's setting the scene, putting what the intervention that you're doing within the wider context. Because any intervention you're going to do on its own doesn't necessarily make sense. The impact locally is far greater than the local benefit in many, many cases. But it's the global benefit that you're trying to set that particular intervention within.
Well, thank you. I am going to come back for a final round from each of you, but first let me hand over to Agnes for your prepared remarks on from mission to action.
Yes, thank you. So speed reflection. So the question for today was, how can we make objectives and measures towards a climate neutral, zero pollution city popular and attractive for the people? So from a perspective of a local Green Deal city, as Mannheim is, this is connected clearly to make a clean, green and healthy city happen for everyone and leaving no one behind. And that has to do with the ownership of the process. And if people are in the driver's seat to design and implement their own local Green Deals, that means real action for the people. So the aim of local Green Deals is to create with all stakeholders a climate neutral and sustainable and inclusive city. And that is a very new way of thinking, to do it with them and not only to ask them if it is good or not good what we are planning as a city. So how can we unlock this potential of local Green Deals? Clean, green and healthy, that are the key issues I mentioned, people are really interested in. Also due to the COVID pandemic, people realize that if the circumstances suddenly change, you have to do something. So to be aware of that, many answers to the question of our debate, changing attitudes or changing measures or changing planning, what is the right thing? The clear answer for me is not or, but and. You need all dimensions of change, like local Green Deals, aiming with systemic changes and policy shifts. And therefore, the local Green Deal pilot city Mannheim has started to concretize its mission statement, Mannheim 2030. This is the strategic goals based on the United Nations 17 SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, with targeted actions, means local Green Deals. So it's not another plan, it's really action. So for all these 8 thematic action fields of the EU Green Deal, climate, zero pollution, circular economy, ecosystems, biodiversity, mobility, from farm to fork, clean energy, energy efficient buildings, including the 3 cross topics, citizens and stakeholders involvement, just transition, and knowledge transfer and innovation. So we are currently checking in the administration the potential for local Green Deals within all departments and municipal companies, and with all our stakeholders in the cities. Aiming stop silo thinking in the administration and together shaping the cities by the people, for the people, bottom up, top down, and cross-departmental. So people's perspective has shifted with COVID, I think, thinking about what is really important in my life. Do we succeed in making people see what we win and not what we lose? So people are already ready for change, but they need an inspiring environment and social innovation platforms and an enabling administration. So that is what local Green Deals can really do. And this can only be achieved by changing our strategy, changing our structures in the city, and changing our culture for a real transformation in the city. So last reflections as the CEO of a climate action agency and the spokesperson of the local Green Deal city office. First, citizens' engagement and acceptance also comes from trust in politics and administration, and from the possibility to participate in the development of the city through one's own actions. Second, if you want acceptance for climate protection or zero pollution measures, don't argument with the climate crisis or climate goals, but start with the word people and quality of life. So that's the deal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Agnes. That was a great summary of all the various points. You have had quite a tricky job to do today. So I'm going to wrap up, and I was going to ask everyone to give me a 1 minute or thereabouts comment or reflection. But I'm actually going to use a question that's been sent in by the audience, which is, how do you see the future of community engagement? It's such a broad question, but I think it gets right to the heart of what we've been trying to answer today. So I'll ask you each to answer that question in 1.5 minutes or thereabouts each. I'm not going to be terribly strict. I'm being very good today. Luis, let me start with you.
Well, in my opinion, social engagement is here to stay, and we cannot hesitate about that. And the thing is that we still have to learn a lot, and there's not a unique solution, and there's not a standardization of how to deploy or how to develop this engagement. It has to be very close to the people. We need the structures. We need to work on it and get closer to the people. We cannot go and then pop up in with a project and say, hey, come here and participate. We have to create a mindset, conditions and structures to make it common, make it useful. Thank you.
Thank you. Alpa, your final response to that question. What do you see as the future of citizen engagement?
Yeah, obviously it's a rising question, and without a doubt, it's part of the planning on all levels. If I put it on that way, and really interesting question here is that what is this kind of connection between community engagement and these more strict climate targets. And we've been reading this really interesting news that there has been this successful legal cases also where these, especially youth, has been saying that governments are not doing enough from the climate actions point of view. It's also something that we in cities and local governments should really study quite carefully, because I think it's also part of the community engagement in the future.
Thank you. David, your reaction to that final question?
Thank you very much. Firstly, I think community engagement is very, 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 very challenging, but it is something that is necessary. We've got to remember that, you know, applying the academic theory to reality impacts directly on people's lives. It's great having a scientific report that says A, B, and C, but once the rubber hits the road and you start implementing that, people's lives are directly affected. I think we will fail if we don't bring communities and society along with us. We have to work in partnership. It can't be a them and us, seeing that this is a top-down approach. Academia or government is imposing this on people. People have to buy into the process and support the process. And I suppose going back to a point I made earlier, I don't think I can stress it enough, it's the context. And as was mentioned earlier by Agnes, it's not just the context of climate change, it's the bigger context of why are we doing this? What is the benefits to you locally from a health, from a well-being, from a placemaking perspective, and how does this fit into the bigger picture? Because individual projects will have a greater or lesser impact on individuals, but overall, when you put them together, they're sum of more than their parts. Thank you.
Thank you. Jan, you got the last floor. So what do you see as the future of citizen engagement?
I believe that we have a very specific challenge ahead regarding that subject. And I think it is something that is a demand on all major stakeholders in this incredible complex puzzle, which is an increasing awareness and importance of empathy. I think especially governmental organizations need to develop a higher level of empathy in negating with their citizens, and not just following the road of arguments and models and calculations and cognitive reasons to do things, but to really embrace from an empathetic point of view the challenge that individuals face in accommodating with these measures and these changes. And I think I'm echoing the opinions of the others, like David mentions in how important it is to have this discussion. But I think the attitude, an empathic attitude, that is something that has helped us in our project in these neighborhoods tremendously to adopt that attitude.
Well, thank you very much. I think you've very clearly all dovetailed quite nicely into your experiences and your aspirations for the future. So that is absolutely wonderful. And thank you very much for participating in this conversation today for GreenWeek. Of course, I want to say thank you very much to the organisers. As I mentioned at the beginning, we have the Smart Cities Marketplace, but also, of course, Urban LEDs, the LEDS. You can follow that online with the hashtag. So that's accelerating climate action through the promotion of urban low emissions development strategies, and also ICLE, that's the local government for sustainability. Thank you for joining us. As I say, keep on having this conversation online. There's the hashtags you can follow. You can follow Urban LEDs, you can follow GreenWeek, and you can follow Climate Action to keep this conversation going. Thank you very much to the audience for joining us. We had so many questions, so interesting and so much to the point that it really helped to drive the conversation. I'm sorry if we didn't get to all of them, but I think we managed to cover the broadest breadth of topics that was possible within this subject within 1 hour alone. So popular objectives and controversial measures. I think the title of it summed it all up. We've not going to solve the dichotomy between the two because we are humans and humans are incredibly awkward. So let's move on. But let's try to find a way to bring more engagement in. Thank you. And with that, have a lovely day.